Hi, I'm Deanna Springer. On behalf of Nancy Zeman Productions and PBS Wisconsin, welcome to the virtual Great Wisconsin Quilt Show. Enjoy this educational presentation, and afterward, be sure to explore all the virtual event has to offer, including beautiful virtual quilt exhibits, an interactive vendor mall, and more. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the show.
Hello, quilters. Welcome to Easy Machine Quilting. I'm Lori Kennedy. I am a quilter and author from Stillwater, Minnesota, and this is my third time teaching for the Wisconsin Quilt Show. I am delighted to be with you, and I'm really grateful to the people at Wisconsin PBS Wisconsin, for creating this show this year and making it possible, a virtual show possible in 2020. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending as well. This is a new experience for all of us, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I love all aspects of quilting, but my favorite is free motion quilting. I've written 3 books about creative free motion quilting, and my latest book, 25 Days to Better Machine Quilting, was released earlier this year. It includes projects as well as lessons to help you to learn the entire, all about free motion quilting. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. Now, they say when you start a new adventure or try a new skill, you should start with why. And I think that's a great question, except when it comes for quilters, I think the why is way too obvious. We quilt because we love fabric, we love thread, we love to buy new notions, and we love to mix it all up in new patterns. So today I thought it might be a little bit more instructive to talk about who do we quilt for, or for whom do we quilt? That might inform us as we start our study of free motion quilting. The vast majority of us create quilts for our family and friends, and we make charity quilts. We make quilts to celebrate certain events like new babies and weddings and birthdays. And we hope that our family and friends will really cherish and love their quilts. And we even hope that at some point they might love them enough that they'll pass them on to future generations. So I think if we really thought about it carefully, what we are trying to create is heirloom quilts, quilts that our family will cherish for multiple generations perhaps, and quilts that we will people in future generations will come to know us by. Now, I thought about calling this talk Creative Heirloom Quilting, but I was really afraid that the word heirloom conjured up certain images of very fussy quilting or hours and hours of labor creating a quilt, and I didn't want you to think about quilting in that way. I think heirloom quilts are quilts that our family cherishes, but work with me a little bit and think about other ways that your family, the people you're quilting for, might really appreciate in a quilt. Now, I know for my family, one of the things that they like are fun quilts, and we can use our motifs to create fun quilts. I think it's important to, when you're creating a quilt, to engage your sense of humor. Don't just think of quilts as being pebbles and feathers and fussy motifs. The motifs can be a lot of fun. The other thing that you can use motifs for is to create personal quilts. When you choose motifs, I recommend that you find motifs that make your heart sing. They should make you happy. If you like birds, pick bird motifs. If you don't like worms or the look of worms, then don't quilt stippling or meandering. Instead, again, pick motifs that make you happy, because when you're happy quilting, your quilts will reveal that or will show that more. Also, your quilts can be personal to the person you're giving the quilt to. For example, my grandson Hugh loves dinosaurs, so I created this little dinosaur. I know it looks a little bit like a turtle. We have a little work to do on this motif. But you can make motifs that are personal to the recipient as well as yourself. I also think heirloom quilts tell a story or can tell a story. This is an example of a quilt that I made for my grandson Henry. He loves trucks. And so I created a little village quilt for him. In each of the signs or on the trucks, I used names of the people in his life, his mother and his grandparents and his aunts and uncles. So this quilt tells his story, and it's somewhat of a family tree. It's another way to use your motifs to create fun quilts. So I think it's important if we think about who we're quilting for, our family and our friends, that to create heirloom quilts, we can tell a story, they can be personal, and they're fun. Now, one thing that you should notice that I didn't say is that they should be perfect. Your quilts do not have to be perfect in order for them to be heirlooms. So look beyond perfection, and as you go forward with your quilting, don't worry so much about perfection. Worry about making the quilts fun for you. Now, there is one aspect of quilting that I think we should strive for perfection, and that is in the stitch, the quality of the stitch. If you make quilts or your quilting line is perfect, but your stitch doesn't look so nice, your quilt will not look good. However, if you have a little bit of a wonky circle, but your stitch looks beautiful, your quilting will be much, much, much nicer and more acceptable, and more likely, again, to become an heirloom. Now, the way you create a perfect stitch is by helping your sewing machine do it. The sewing machine has to make the stitch, but there are some things that we can do to help it. If you start with a clean and well-oiled sewing machine, it makes it easier for your machine to create a perfect stitch. Now, when you're doing free motion quilting, because of the nature of the batting and how quickly we're stitching, you'll notice that you get much more lint built up. So it's more important to oil and clean your machine when you're doing free motion quilting than for other sewing applications. Again, always start with a clean and well-oiled sewing machine. Now, because we're doing free motion quilting, we have to lower the feed dogs. The feed dogs are the teeth-like projections that rest underneath the sole plate of the sewing machine. In normal sewing, they advance the sewing or the fabric forward. In free motion quilting, we want to take control of that, so we lower the feed dogs. They're completely out of the way, and that way we control the quilt. Now, another way to help your sewing machine make a really beautiful stitch is to use a single hole throat plate. Most of our sewing machines come with a zigzag sole plate. It's much wider, and it allows for the excursion of the needle to go back and forth. In some machines, it can be 5 or even 9 millimeters. If you instead acquire a single hole throat plate, and usually, again, this is an additional accessory that you may have to purchase, that helps to support the quilt from underneath while the needle penetrates it, and you'll have a much nicer stitch when you use a single hole throat plate. Now, there are a lot of machine needles that you can use for free motion quilting. My preference is the top stitch needle. It has a large eye and a deep groove, and it really helps protect the thread as it penetrates into the bobbin case. Again, helping your machine create a lovely stitch. Now, this is going to strike fear in some of your hearts, but you must learn how to adjust the tension on your sewing machine. Pull out your sewing machine manual and practice. Look up what you need to do to change and adjust your tension. In free motion quilting, we are using a wide variety of threads and multiple layers, so it is a little bit challenging for the sewing machine to create a balanced stitch. Our machines are calibrated with 50 weight thread on the top and the bottom and in the bobbin, and then they're calibrated with just 2 or 3 pieces of fabric going forward in a straight stitch. Free motion quilting is quite a lot more tugging and pulling than that. And again, because of the multiple layers, it's a little bit difficult. For most sewing machines, you can adjust just the top tension. You don't even have to touch the bobbin tension in order to create a really nice looking stitch. But just being aware that changing the tension is going to affect the look of your stitch is an important thing to start observing. And once you do and start playing with it, you'll see that you can create a nicer stitch. Now, there are many foot options for free motion quilting. I know Bernina alone has about 11 different feet that you can use for free motion quilting. You cannot use the normal foot that comes on your sewing machine. You need a foot that has a little bit of this spring action that releases with every stitch. I prefer a foot that is open-toed and offset. And what I mean by that is it is not a full ring, it's only a partial ring that's open in the front, and the shaft is not directly behind the needle. It is offset a little bit, and what that does is it allows you greater visibility. Most sewing machine manufacturers have a variation like this, so see if you can find that, or at least find one that creates the greatest visibility when you're free motion quilting. Now, once the machine is set up and you have your quilt top done, there are 3 things that work together to create the look and your feel of your quilt, and that is batting, thread, and motifs. All of these 3 things work together to create the look and feel. If you change one of these, any one of these elements, you'll change how your quilt looks. So you want to be aware of that. Let's start with batting. Now, there are many batting fibers available and many batting styles available. All of them are just a matter of personal preference. Just make sure you get a good quality, and most of them are available. There are many brands available that are good quality. And then there's 3 things that you need to look for. Look at color, loft, and spacing. Now, if you are making a quilt that has a lot of white in it, I recommend that you choose a white batting or a bleach batting. If you use a natural batting, sometimes it shows through the white fabrics and gives it a bit of a dingy look. Also, if you're making a quilt that is very dark or has a lot of black in it, you might consider using a black batting. That way, when some of the fibers migrate through the stitches, which almost inevitably happens, it'll be less noticeable if they're black, if they're darker. Now, the other thing to look at is loft. Loft is just a matter of personal preference. It is a combination of kind of density and thickness, and it's really whatever you like in your quilts. But be aware when you're buying different battings that they will have different lofts, and most brands have a range of lofts. You just need to know what you like in your quilt and choose accordingly. Now, there's one thing to look at on the label of the batting, and that is the spacing. Every batting will show the spacing required, the maximum spacing required for quilting. You can always quilt closer than the maximum, but not wider than that. What happens if you quilt beyond the maximum number is when you wash your quilt, it will tear, the batting will tear within the quilt. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I started quilting was I didn't make samples. And I like to say that samples are the cure for disappointing results. What happens is if you don't make samples, you will be surprised by the result you get. And it may not be wrong, it may just be different from what you expected. So make sure when you're making a quilt to use some of the blocks, leftover blocks, layer them with your batting, and see how it looks when it's stitched. It's also important to make sure you wash your batting samples, because after batting or after a quilt is washed, it often has a very different look. And you want to make sure that that's something that you like. For example, cotton really wrinkles up, and some people love that textured look and others don't. Again, if you make a sample, you'll know what to expect, and I think you'll have better results. Again, there's three things: batting, thread, and motifs that work together. Now let's talk about thread. Again, you want to always choose a good quality thread. And one of the three of the things that you need to look at are the color, weight, and sheen. Now, color is obvious, and we're always drawn to certain colors, but you'll want to start paying attention to having a range of colors from light to dark and medium, so that you start to develop a collection that will really work towards what you're trying to achieve in your quilt. Weight is also an important characteristic, and that is the thickness or fineness of the thread. And sheen is another quality of thread that you can look for. It is how light reflective it is and how much it shines, basically. All of these are determined by the type of fiber and the combination of fibers and the way they're manufactured. So you just have to look for what your preference is in that. Now, if you're trying to make a focus motif, you'll want to use a heavyweight thread in a contrasting color. If you really want to see the motif, the heavier the thread, the better, and the more contrasting with the background fabric, the more it will show up. If, on the other hand, you want to create a texture motif, then use a lightweight thread, a very fine thread, in a matching color. And then the motif will just blend into the background and you really won't see it. And sometimes that's the desired effect. Now, threads are measured on a continuum. Their weight is measured on a continuum from 100 being very fine weight to 12, which is about the heaviest weight that you can use in a sewing machine. Some machines don't really like 12 weight, but that's the range that you can use. 50 weight is the weight that we use most frequently for piecing, and it's considered kind of an all-purpose thread. If it's finer than that, it would probably be a 60 or an 80, maybe even 100. And if it's heavier, it would be in the category of about 40, 30, 28. Now, all the manufacturers use different methods for weighing these things, so they're all a little bit different, and you need to be aware of that. One of the best ways to check the weight of your thread is really just by inspection. Get in the habit of spooling off a little bit of thread and looking at it. After a while, you'll start to realize what is a heavyweight thread and what is a lightweight thread. I like to compare it to the thread that I use most frequently. So if you use a 50 weight thread, start looking at, when you pick up a new spool of thread, spool it out and decide, is it heavier than that or lighter than that? I think that's the best way to really decide what is the weight of a thread. Once you've chosen the thread, then it's really important to compare it by stitching. So this is an example of a practice piece that I did using all white thread. All three of these are white thread. On the one hand, the 100 weight thread is so fine that it almost picks up the color of whatever you're stitching on. In the middle, the 50 weight thread, you might look at that as a focus motif and think, wow, that looks really quite nice. But if you compare it to the 28 weight thread, you really see the impact that a heavier weight thread will have. So it's a good idea to use these practice trials with different weight threads to see what kind of effect you're going to get. I rarely use 50 weight thread on top for my free motion quilting, because if I'm trying to create a texture, you can see that that finer weight thread really is better. It creates a better texture. And likewise, if I want to create a focus motif, while the 50 weight thread is nice, the 28 weight thread really has better impact. Again, if you make a sample, you'll be able to see it more clearly. Now, here's another sample that's really important to look at. When you're making quilts that have a lot of contrast in them, where it's like a dark teal and this white, for example, if you were to choose a white thread, you can see how it really shows up a lot on the teal, but it drops out completely on the white fabric. Likewise, on the dark, when you choose a dark teal, it disappears on the dark fabric, but is very, very visible on the white fabric. So if you want to use just one thread, you may have to choose a compromise like a medium colored teal, and that will show up evenly on all the pieces. Again, there's always the option that you can change thread in the white section and change thread for the teal section. But if you want to use one thread, you're going to really have to look at the different effects that the color makes. Now, once you've chosen your thread, now it's time to choose the needle size. So whether you're quilting or sewing, the needle size is determined by the weight of your thread. So choose your thread weight first, and then the needle size. If you're using a 50 weight thread, which is in the middle, you will use a size 80 or 12 needle. Here's a little chart showing comparing the sizes. So if you're using a 50 weight thread, you want the size 80 needle, start there. And if you are using a finer thread, you need a smaller needle. If you're using a heavier thread, you use a heavier or a higher gauge needle. Now you might want to take a screenshot of this, but it's also, you can come to my website, LoriKennedyQuilts.com, and this is available there, and it's also available in my books. But if you always remember to use the correct needle size, you will avoid shredded thread and skip stitches, and generally you'll get better stitch quality from using the right size needle. Now, before we move on, I just wanted to talk about bobbin thread as well. I like to use 50 weight bobbin thread. You can use cotton or polyester, and I like to use it in a color that matches the top thread. You get a nicer looking stitch with that, I find. Now you can use a lighter weight thread, and that means you can get more yards on the bobbin. That means you can stitch longer, so that's fine. But I wouldn't recommend using a heavier weight thread in the bobbin. Usually it just doesn't last as long, and often bobbin cases don't like the heavyweight thread. So I always use 50 weight cotton in my bobbin. Find a bobbin thread that works for you and stick with it. That would be the best way to go forward. Now we get to my favorite part, of course, motifs. Motifs are the thing that really add personality to your quilts. You can use them for design focus or to create texture. It's really important when you're learning motifs to doodle first. Doodling helps you develop muscle memory so that when you get to your sewing machine, you don't hesitate when you're quilting, and you'll get a much smoother line. I also like to use the time when I'm doodling to create new designs and to combine designs. It's a great way to just really get your creativity flowing and get the ideas generated before you sit down at your sewing machine to quilt. And the other thing to do while you're doodling is to determine the scale of a motif. So you might decide you want a flower motif, but you need to also look at it within the context of your quilt. Do you want a big flower or a small flower? So all those things are done in the doodle phase. One of my favorite motifs is to use your handwriting, to use my handwriting, and I love to see that in other quilts. Your cursive writing is primarily a continuous line. So you have the muscle memory already for a continuous line design, which is what all free motion quilting is. You want one continuous line. Now there are a few exceptions, the letters I, T, J, and X, because you have to dot those or cross those. You have to doodle some variations so that you can do that without having to pick up your pen. You can't stop and move your needle like that. So what I do is, as I sweep up for the I put a circle on it before I sweep down. And likewise for the other letters, T, J, and X. Letters make really great motifs just as they are. So here's a little quilt that I made with the letters Q, U, I, L, and T. And you can see just by repeating those letters over and over again, it really creates a real pretty design element that you can use. And again, because you already have the muscle memory in it, it's a great way to start. Most letters are continuous line, and so they're very easy to stitch. You can stitch words, you can stitch phrases, and they look great. When you're doing the letters I, T, J, and X, just remember to add the dot or the cross before you come down. And again, if you practice this in doodling, it'll be really easy. When you're doing a phrase, I usually just add a little wavy line between the words to separate the words, and that makes it very readable. I would encourage you to use words, phrases, and your handwriting in your quilting. It's a great bridge to free motion quilting. One of my favorite motifs is Flower Power. It's one motif that I think everyone should learn because it makes a great texture motif as well as a great focal motif. And there's many variations of it that really will suit many different quilt styles. When you're stitching Flower Power, all you do is start with a little curl and add scallops all the way around the curl. And then you reverse directions and add another set of scallops all the way around. You just keep adding more and more scallops, and you can grow it to be very large to fill a large space, or you can make it small. If you would like the motif to be a flower, simply add a leaf. And then if you'd rather it was just texture, don't add the leaf and it'll look like texture, just a textured pattern. It's really easy to start a new flower. Anywhere along the path, you can add a spiral and make a new motif. So again, this is a really easy motif and one everyone should learn. There are many variations of it. Here's Flower Power as a focus motif. And here it is as a texture motif. So it's a great motif, very versatile, and a lot easier than stippling and meandering. Another one of my favorite motifs is to do a messy spiral. Spirals can be the standard spiral where you evenly curl in and curl out are challenging. But if you try a messy spiral where you just make a circle and stitch over the previous line of stitching, it looks great. If you add a dash and then make a messy spiral and more dashes, you can create a background fill motif. Another one of my favorite ways to use messy spirals is just to link them all together. It's a great way to fill a small border. And then thirdly, if you add leaves to a row of messy spirals, it really looks like a row of roses or flowers. So this is a really easy motif for everyone to use, and I highly recommend practicing that with your doodling. What I'd like you to get from today is that creative motifs make quilts heirlooms. If you have fun when you're quilting and you personalize your quilts, they will tell a story. And for most of us, again, who are making our quilts for our family and our friends, that will be what makes quilts cherished for years to come. Don't quit before the quilt magic happens. Quilting, machine quilting is a skill like any other. It takes a long time to learn. But if you enjoy the process, you will go forward and you'll have a great time doing it, and you'll make quilts that are heirlooms. Be sure to doodle every day. That really increases your muscle memory, it expands your creativity, and you'll have better success when you're free motion quilting. Again, if you have fun when you're quilting, your quilts will be fun. So that's the most important thing to learn today. I'd love for you to join us for 25 weeks of Better Quilting. It's a program, a quilt-along that's available on my blog. It's free. You can do it at a self-paced way, and I think you'll learn a lot from it. There's a lot of different topics, and we cover a lot of things. Remember, a quilt without personality is just a blanket. So let's go out there and make happy quilts that are heirlooms. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you next year. Happy quilting.
Thank you for joining us for Easy Machine Quilting with Lori Kennedy, and we're pleased to be live with you today with some Q&A with Lori. Welcome, Lori, from your home studio in Minnesota.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an exciting day, and this is a all new adventure for all of us. So I'm excited to be able to do this Q&A live.
Wonderful. We're glad you're up for it, and we have questions, so we'll get right to it.
Okay.
One of our first questions is from Terry in Madison. She's a little bit hesitant about using the single hole needle plate. She's sometimes bent her needle when doing free motion. How do you avoid the bend and the subsequent breaking of needles and also possibly damaging the machine?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Thank you for that, Terry. One of the problems that you might be experiencing if you're using a much heavier or a larger quilt and a heavier quilt is that you're pulling a lot on your quilt. So that's probably what's going on and why you're causing that bent needle. I think it's important, first of all, to make sure you use good quality needles and then be careful about how much pulling you're doing while you're stitching. Again, if you do start noticing that you're breaking needles, then you're right. I would go back to the larger needle plate. But in general, if you slow down a little bit and move a little bit slower with your quilt, that shouldn't be a problem.
And I like your tip about using a top stitching needle. It's great for the thread, but it's also a little bit stronger than perhaps a needle Terry has used previously.
Right. Yes, and that's a good point. They flex less. Maybe they flex, enough that they don't break. But yes, that's a good point.
Our next question is from Chris in Wautoma, Wisconsin. Lori, could you please repeat the book you've written on machine quilting?
Well, I'd be happy to do that. I've written 3 books on machine quilting. My latest book, and I'm going to show it to you here, is 25 Days to Better Machine Quilting. And it's a series of individual lessons that each have a project that go with it. And I'm doing a quilt along on my blog to follow along with that, a week thing. And then I've also written 2 books that are primarily motif books, but there's a lot of good information in these as well. This is Free Motion Machine Quilting 1, 2, 3, and I'll show you the other one, more Free Motion Machine Quilting 1, 2, 3. And there, let me open it up, each of these is an individual motif. So it's a really easy way to learn motifs.
I recognize the Free Motion Quilting 1, 2, 3. You were on Sewing with Nancy with that. And I brought your quilt along that you had gifted to Nancy, the Tea Time quilt, and it's just gorgeous. And the way you've machine quilted this, when you change directions in the thread, the studio lights really pick up on the different shine of the thread.
Are available through you or through my website as well.
Correct, and you can watch on demand anytime streaming at nancyzieman.com, and that takes you right to the PBS Wisconsin website to watch Free Motion Quilting with Nancy and Lori. And we have lots of questions that we'll get back to, Lori. Anne is asking, do you have a chart for needles and threads, specifically for long arm machines?
Actually, I do not, but maybe that's something I need to do in the future. I don't use a long arm. I use a sit-down long arm or a domestic sewing machine, and they use interchangeable needles. So I don't have that available for you right now.
Okay.
But thanks for the idea.
Great idea. Michelle from Texas is tuning in and asking, Lori, can you use a darning plate to do FMQ? And she means free motion quilting, if there's no way to lower your feed dogs.
I think I'm not absolutely sure what a darning plate is. I believe that does cover the feed dogs. So anything that covers the feed dogs would do that. If, as long as it obviously has a hole for your needle. So yes, I think that is probably the right plate to use. Some quilters don't even have that anymore, and you can just put a piece of cardboard, like a note card, over it as well and cut a hole in it. So anything you can do to cover the feed dogs.
And that addresses another question we have from Maria from Kohler. She said, my machine doesn't have feed dogs that you can drop. It's an old-fashioned machine. Do I need to buy a new machine?
Well, I can't answer that completely for you, but in terms of the lowering the feed dogs, there are two options actually that you have. One is to cover them, as I said, with I think it's the darning plate. I think that's correct, or a piece of note card, and you tape it down. But another option is to set your feed dog or your stitch length to 0, because what that does is it tells the feed dogs normally advance your sewing item forward by a measured amount. If you set that to 0, what you're telling your machine is that you don't want it to move at all. So if you have that option, that's another thing to try. And I just want to point out too, sometimes on some machines, if you have difficulty with any kind of tension problems when your feed dogs are lowered, you might try that. Keep the feed dogs engaged, but set the stitch length to 0. So that's another option. Give that a try before you buy your sewing machine.
Great tip, Lori. And Debbie from Iowa is tuning in on YouTube, and she's asking, do I need a special machine to create your motifs?
Absolutely not. I've made all of these motifs on a domestic sewing machine, and I know that there are quilters who have sent me photos of their work even on treadle sewing machines, and they're absolutely beautiful. So no special machine is required, and that's the beauty of it. You don't have to invest in something very expensive. You do need to have a machine in good working order that you can adjust tension, but really you don't need any kind of special sewing machine for this, you don't need any knowledge of software, things like that. You can just doodle and sew.
That's so exciting. That's great news,
Makes
Lori.
it freeing, very freeing.
Mm-hmm. Mary is asking, where on the batting package is the spacing listed?
It's on every package that I've ever seen. It's either on the front, right on the label, or on the back. I think if you're not used to looking for it, you haven't noticed it. But I think if you pull out one of your packages, you'll find that.
Great tip, and that's the spacing that the stitches need to be so they're not too far apart. And I'm skipping over many comments that are so complimentary. Thank you for your kind words for Lori and her techniques. Kelly is asking, I made a sample with the exact top fabric, batting, and backing. I practiced adjusting my top tension, and it was all good. When I got to my actual project, I ran into bad tension with my free motion quilting.
If you were practicing on a small piece, I think what may have happened is when you got to the bigger piece, there was more drag. So I think what I would look at there is how you are supporting your quilt. You may need to provide more support all over the quilt. In other words, sometimes what I do is I put a table next to my sewing machine and a table behind it. Another thing you can do is to have your sewing machine table up in the corner of a room so it's blocked and isn't dragging. I think probably what's happening there is the tension is caused by the drag, the weight, the gravity pulling on your quilt. That's what I would look to first for that problem.
And Lori, that relates to a similar question we received. For doing a sample, should I start really small, like a coaster size, to try my very first free motion quilting? I know you probably don't want to start with the king size, but what size do you recommend?
Well, I think that's a really great question. I would not recommend that you start off with a king or a very large quilt. It just makes it too hard. On the other extreme, though, a coaster size is actually very difficult to quilt because there's nowhere to properly place your hands. So I recommend that most people start their samples at about the size of a fat quarter, which is about 18 by 20 inches approximately. Somewhere in that range is really comfortable. And then as you gain confidence and you learn about threads and how to move the quilt, then grow, in size to larger quilts. I think that's the best way. But, you don't have a novice driver start with a semi. They start with we have a little compact car. It's the same thing here.
Oh, good point. Good advice. And Safitha is asking, Lori, could you please tell us about the quilt hanging behind you? Do the squares have stitching on the borders?
Let's see. I don't know what's the best way to show you. This is a quilt that I made and have recently finished quilting. The squares, is this what I think she might be referring to, these squares?
Right, the squares on the border.
Okay, those squares do not have quilting on them, and that is by design. What I did is I stitched all the way around them and left them without quilting, because whenever you do that, it makes those really pop. It actually physically lifts them, but it also visually lifts them off your quilt. So that's why those really pop. And then I did this kind of similar technique in here. This is heavily quilted, this is heavily quilted, and then this is left open so that, again, it's a little difficult to see here, but you can see that those colors then really pop off my quilt visually and physically. If you'd like to see more photos of this quilt, that's available on my website, LoriKennedyQuilts.com. I can't think, it's called the Boxes and Vines quilt. So if you put that in the search bar, it'll show up. And there's more detailed photos of that. But that's a technique that you should always use. Think about what you want to see pop on your quilt, and don't quilt that. Quilt around it densely and then leave that to pop, if that makes sense.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It does. Thanks, Lori. Bree is asking, when free motion quilting over seams in the quilt top, my spring-loaded free motion foot often snags on that hump of that seam. Are there ways to adjust the setting to lift the baseline higher off the quilt surface?
That depends on your sewing machine. Some machines have an adjustment for that, but not all of them do. So I think when you get to those, if you can't do that, then you have to just be very careful when you're stitching around those. Stitch slower. And sometimes if I have an area where maybe 5 seams come together at once, you have to stitch very carefully and slowly, because even in the best of circumstances, that's an area that's a lot of resistance for your machine needle and your machine. So sometimes I can design something around that. For example, if I have 5 seams that come together, I might make that the center of a circle with flowers around it. That's the center of the flower with circles around it. I actually do design around that sometimes because it is very challenging. So all I can say is slow down a little bit. Also, if it's appropriate to your design, you could use a machine-guided technique and stitch in that ditch to help push it down a little bit, secure it before you free motion quilt over it. If you use a matching color thread in a light weight, you won't even notice the stitching in the ditch there. You will still see your free motion quilting. So that's another opportunity for design, or, just sometimes those are challenges we have to face.
Great tips, great advice. Several solutions there. Avoid the intersection is one of them, too.
Exactly.
Cheryl from Indiana is asking, what is the best way to wash batting without ruining it?
The topic of washing batting. Now, I assume what you mean is washing the batting before it's in the quilt, because once it's in the quilt, it's pretty safe. But I've read several manufacturers. One of the things you have to do is look at the type of batting it is and read what the manufacturers state, or go to their website even and ask them. I know that some quilters like to wash their batting, and one of the safest ways really is just to submerge it in a bathtub. It's really a challenge to do that, and I don't do that. I tried it once. It was kind of not fun. It took some of the fun out of quilting for me, so I don't do it, so I don't have a lot of advice for you. But I have read from some of the manufacturers that they don't recommend, depending on the fiber and how it is manufactured, it may be that they don't recommend doing that at all. So be aware of that. Make sure you, again, make samples. and don't necessarily, I guess I would think about what you're trying to do by doing that. If you're trying to prevent shrinkage, that shrinkage effect, then maybe what you would be a lot easier is to buy a batting that is cotton plus polyester that minimizes shrinkage, or just polyester. So you might, if you think that's what you're trying to achieve, there might be an easier way that's just as effective by finding a different batting. I hope that helps.
It does, and we can read our packaging instructions too for that. Great advice, Lori. Joan on Facebook is asking, what tip do you have for me so that the top and the bottom fabric stays smooth when I'm free motion quilting on my regular machine? So keeping those layers together.
Well, that does come down to careful basting. There's several methods, or two methods that I would recommend for basting. One is the spray basting method, and you need to be just very careful about doing that. Or you can also do pin basting. The one method I don't recommend for free motion quilting is the hand basted with threads across it, because as you stitch, you end up stitching over that. As you free motion quilt, you end up stitching over those, and that gets to be a big mess. So either pin basting or spray basting. And unfortunately, that's one of my least favorite parts of free motion quilting is the basting, but it's an important step, and there's no getting around it. One of the things I do is I clamp each of the layers one at a time to my sewing table, and you can use a banquet table or whatever you have. And you can put banquet tables together to make it larger. I clamp each of the sections of the quilt. And then I layer the next piece on, and I clamp it again, and then the top on and clamp it. That is my favorite method for doing it. And then I go back and pin that, about 5 inches apart. So it's a time-consuming process, but there's no getting around it. And you'll be sorry if you don't take the time to finish that step properly.
Good. We'll follow that advice. Thanks, Lori. Jean is asking, how do you decide if you are going to use the domestic machine or a sit-down long arm?
Well, as I may have said, I have both. I have the domestic and the sit-down, the domestic sewing machine, and I have a Q20 sit-down long arm. Generally, I do use the Q20 for all my free motion quilting now. Up until a few years ago, I didn't have that option, but that's what I did. Now, on this quilt behind me, I don't know if you can see very well, but one of the things that I wanted to do was decorate each of the flowers. And there was no real great way to move from one flower to the next in a free motion quilting way. So what I did is every one of those flowers, after I stitch it, I cut off the threads. I cut, knotted, and moved to the next section. So that was one example where I took my big quilt over to my domestic sewing machine, because that machine has the ability to push a button to cut the top and bobbin threads, which was a great advantage for this process where I was doing all these, stops and starts. But otherwise, I like the freedom and the size that the sit-down long arm gives me. But again, I just, bought that machine a few years ago. I've done king, queen, very large quilts on a domestic sewing machine. It can be done. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Great advice, and technology can be a time saver for sure, and traditional can be very enjoyable too. Our next two questions are from Mary and Carrie. Separate questions, but talking about thread in the top of the machine and in the bobbin. Mary is asking, should your thread in the top match the bobbin regardless of the backing fabric color? And Carrie's asking about the weight. Do I use the same weight thread in the top as I do in the bobbin?
Those are both great questions. So thank you to Mary and Carrie. Let's first talk about weight of thread. And the manufacturers will tell you that you should use the same weight thread in the top and the bobbin when you're doing normal sewing, because that's the easiest thing for your machine to accommodate. However, if you're using a very heavyweight thread in your top thread, and we might be using a 12 weight thread or a 28 weight thread, you wouldn't want to use that thread in the bobbin. First of all, your bobbin, it is actually more difficult for your bobbin to use that thread. It's better to use a 50 weight or a lower weight thread. And it wouldn't go very far. If you put a 28 weight thread, that's not many yards that will fit on the bobbin. So I still, no matter what I'm using, I find I like the 50 weight bobbin, 50 weight thread in my bobbin. It goes a really long way, and I'm really happy with that. My machine likes it. So part of it is finding out what your machine likes. It doesn't matter what my machine likes. If your machine likes something else, go with that. That's the most important thing. Now, when it comes to color, I really try to put the same color in the top and bobbin. It's not an absolute, but I find for two reasons. One, inevitably, no matter how well you balance your stitch, inevitably there are parts of the quilting pattern where the tension will be a little bit off. It's just the nature of free motion quilting. When the colors match, then you cannot see that little pinprick, it looks like, of different color when they're not matched. Okay, does that make sense? So if your tension's off a little bit, it will be far less noticeable. The other thing is that sometimes, especially in light colored threads, I notice that if the bobbin thread is the same color, the thread, this is a very nuanced thing, but I think it really looks a little richer and deeper. So it's a small thing, but it can be noticeable if you're really paying attention. Now, the reason you might not want to is because you might want to try to match the color on the back of your quilt. Now, if you're really planning ahead, you could make sure that you've planned that. You put the same, something that would work, that would match on your backing fabric. If not, that's one of those decisions that you get to make. And for every quilt, it could be different. I tend to not care too much about the back of my quilt. And again, think about who you're quilting for. If it's for you and it's, what you want, then do what, again, it doesn't really matter. And I think if your stitch is a little imbalanced, that would be a good reason to have the same color in both.
Well, thank you for that great advice, Lori.
I have one other idea, though. Sometimes what I do, if I don't have the right color for my bobbin, you can also choose a color for the bobbin that matches the top of the quilt, because again, then it won't show. So if you have a blue quilt and white thread on top, you could actually use blue in the bobbin and it won't show up as well either.
Perfect tip. Well, thank you for your wisdom and your permission to think outside the box and give us the inspiration to try free motion quilting in our next quilt. So thank you for joining us today, Lori.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been, again, a great adventure, one of our new things that we do in 2020. And I just hope that everyone will take this time to have fun with their quilting. That's the take-home message for me. I'd love for you to join me at Lori Kennedy Quilts, where I have many free motion quilt tutorials, quilts, tips, and we have the quilt along going on right now. You can join it at any time and do it at your pace. So that's LoriKennedyQuilts.com.
Fabulous, Lori. We'll see you next time. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And be sure to head over to quiltshow.com and take in all the quilt exhibits and look at those free motion machine stitches more closely. Enjoy.